welcome to another episode of InstaVision. I'm Glenn Reynolds. So are we going off the fiscal cliff like Thelma and Louise, or, well, what's going to happen? I'm talking to Dan Mitchell. He's a senior fellow at the Cato Institute, and he blogs at International Liberty. It's great to have you here, Dan.
Glad to be on the program, Glenn.
Thanks. So you actually said in a column, I think it was at the Blaze, that the no tax hike pledge that's being contested now is an IQ test for the Republicans, and one you think they may have trouble passing. What do you mean by that?
Just looking back at history, whether we're talking about Ronald Reagan in 1982, George Herbert Walker Bush in 1990, every time Republicans get in a room with Democrats to hammer out a fiscal deal of some kind, they always get taken to the cleaners. We wind up getting the tax increases. Any promises of spending restraint quickly evaporate, and government's bigger, and we actually have more red ink at the end of the day. 100% of our fiscal problem, both in the short run and the long run, is government that is too big and doing too much. And if Republicans give away the one bit of fiscal credibility they have by, in effect, becoming, as Newt Gingrich said many years ago, tax collectors for the welfare state, then they don't deserve anybody's votes, much less any credibility on economic matters.
Yeah, I know that one sort of Machiavellian theory I've heard is that Obama actually wants Republicans to break these pledges, not so much to get the tax increases, though he's happy with those, but because he knows that Republicans who break them are going to be primaried and might wind up being weaker in the general election, help him retake the House and keep the Senate in 2014. Do you think that's true?
I don't know what's inside Obama's head, but I do know that the 1982 and 1990 elections weren't that good for the Republican Party. Voters out there, as we just saw in the most recent election, aren't exactly enamored of the GOP. And if the Republicans threw away the one issue that voters tend to be on their side on, I mean, I'm not a political scientist, I'm an economist, but that doesn't seem like it would be a very smart move on their part.
Yeah, well, we have a little history on that. In fact, there's one very famous no tax pledge that was broken, and that was George H.W. Bush's famous Read My Lips pledge. We've actually got the video of that right here, so let's run it.
And I'll say no, and they'll push, and I'll say no, and they'll push again, and I'll say to them, read my lips.
So, you know, Bush broke that promise, and then he sailed to easy re-election in 1992 over some guy we've never heard of since named Clinton, right? So what's to worry about?
Yeah, no, I remember that second Bush term. It was great. As a matter of fact, I was made Treasury Secretary. We adopted a flat tax, and we put in place personal retirement accounts and solved our long-term fiscal problem. So we're now growing 5% a year. I mean, don't you feel great, too?
Life is great here on Earth, too, you know, in the parallel universe where Bush wasn't a wimp. Oh, well. Yeah, well, having seen this happen, why do you think Republicans are looking like they might be willing to fall for the same old trap again? It's like Charlie Brown and Lucy in the football or something.
To be fair, there actually is a compelling reason to have discussions today, because the taxing cuts that Bush put in place back in 2001 and 2003, they automatically expire at the end of this year. So by definition, the Senate, the House, and the White House somehow have to come together and come to some agreement if we don't want a giant tax increase. Unfortunately, Obama is being very dogmatic, and he's basically threatening that we'll have tax increases for everybody unless you Republicans capitulate to me and agree to raise taxes on those evil, bad, rich people, the top 2%.
Yeah, now I have to say, I have some tax increases that I've been proposing, which I think I think the GOP should be pushing them and just sticking them in any bill here and daring the Democrats to take them out. One of them is to restore the 20% excise tax on movie tickets and theater receipts, which was on a gross receipts tax, by the way, not even net, and extend it to DVDs, movie downloads, basically all entertainment products. Because, you know, that last time we were trying to get out of the big World War II debt problem, and now we've got another big one. So, you know, Back to the Future, tried and true. It was a Truman, policy, an FDR policy. What could be wrong with it? The other is to put a 50% surtax on post-government earnings of administration officials in excess of their government salaries. So whatever the difference is between what you made as Undersecretary of the Treasury and what you make at Goldman Sachs, half of it goes to the taxpayers because, let's be honest, you didn't build that. Somebody else built that. You're valuable to Goldman Sachs because you work for the taxpayers. I think if the Republicans started pushing ideas like this, I think that the Democrats would decide that maybe tax increases aren't so great. What do you think?
I've enjoyed reading those posts on your blog. As a matter of fact, I threw in one on my blog in addition to yours, and that's the notion that with all these executives coming to Washington and saying, oh yes, we need to raise taxes, let's do a special excise tax on the top 5 officers in every publicly traded corporation on any salaries in excess of, say, $1 million. If they really think that raising taxes is the right idea, they should be the first ones to put their neck in the guillotine. Now, of course, just like with your proposed tax increases, all of a sudden, these people who say they want higher taxes, they'll be exposed as a bunch of frauds because what they really want is higher taxes on the rest of us, and they figure if they go to the political elite in Washington and make all the right noises, they won't be the ones who get hit. In effect, they're throwing everyone else to the alligators in hopes that they get eaten last. But let's turn it upside down and put them first in line, whether it's the Hollywood tax cuts that you want to repeal, whether it's the tax on all the lobbyists who are trading in on their government service, or the special excise tax that I like on these CEOs who seem to think the rest of us should pay more taxes.
I'm happy to back the Dan Mitchell tax increase plan for America. But my real question is, and I know they call the GOP the stupid party, but they haven't always been this stupid. Why are we not seeing anything in the way of creative ideas to make the other guys sweat come out of the GOP leadership anywhere? I mean, it's pretty sad when you're getting stuff from a couple of bloggers like us and you're not seeing any of this kind of thing from the actual Republican leadership. What's wrong?
I think this is a legacy of the mistake that Bush made in the first place of having tax cuts that automatically expire. Now, interestingly enough, we had exactly this same fight at the end of 2010. And this was before Republicans controlled the House, and this was when they had fewer seats in the Senate. And by sticking together and saying everyone has to continue with their current tax cuts, we're not allowing tax increases on everybody, Obama actually gave in. Reid in the Senate gave in. Pelosi in the House gave in. So when they had less power, Republicans won simply because they put arms together and they said, we are not going to allow taxes to go up on anybody, and that meant that taxes stayed the same for everybody. And it would be just spectacularly incompetent, now that they have more power, if they couldn't have the exact same fight and win it. And it's just a matter, I think, of some of these guys, especially the ones that are breaking the no tax pledge, some of these guys are just too comfortable with Washington. They came here many years ago thinking it was a cesspool, and now they're thinking, hey, it's a hot tub.
Well, last question. What should viewers do if they want to do something about this? What constructive things can ordinary Americans do here?
It's always a good idea to put pressure on politicians and to tell them that we don't want tax increases now, especially with a weak economy. We don't want to penalize small businesses, investors, and entrepreneurs. That's really crazy in a competitive global economy when we want more job creation and wealth creation. That's a very dumb idea. But I think it's also important just to understand the basic facts. Do you realize that if we simply limit the growth of government spending so that it grows by an average of 2.5% a year, we can balance the budget in 10 years? I mean, I want draconian cuts, but we don't even need to do that. Just restrain the growth of government so it grows slower than the private sector, and great things happen. The whole reason we are having this tax fight is because the politicians want more revenue so they can make government grow even bigger. And we know from Greece, from Italy, from Spain, we know where that eventually winds up. It just doesn't work.
No, but you know, they're like a drunk. They always want just one more drink, and that seems to be how it works out here. I just hope we don't have to hit bottom before they recover from their problem. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us, Dan.
Well, one last thing. Go Georgia Bulldogs.
Okay. All right, thanks so much. Dan Mitchell is a senior fellow at the Cato Institute, and he blogs at International Liberty. we'll hope to have him back again in the future. And we'll be back again in the future too, so we hope you'll tune in then. In the meantime, have fun on the internet. Thanks.